So thank you everyone for coming and joining us for this. It's 1:02, so we'll get started. My name is Rebecca Cowing. I'm the Executive Director of the Chicago Midwest Chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. We're thrilled to have so many of you here today to join us for this webinar, just one in a series of webinars that we're doing this spring. This one is especially exciting because our junior board put it together for us, and we're able to get some great knowledge here, learn about being a production assistant. I know Stuart said when he was in school, he didn't have he didn't have access to information like this. So we hope this webinar will be helpful to you, and thank you for attending. And please know we are recording this as well. I'm going to introduce Ronan Morrissey. He's one of the co-chairs of our junior board. A junior board is a new initiative that the chapter is doing. We have about 20 young adults on the junior board that it's helping the chapter and all sorts of stuff and trying to reach that younger generation. So Ronan, I'll introduce you.
Thank you. No, you said it better than I probably would have said it. But no, nice to see everybody come out for this. Noah and Stuart, who's on the outreach committee of the junior board, has been doing a lot of hard work and putting this together. So we really thank you all for coming out and seeing this. So this is the first kind of event we've done this of this kind of topic. So we're really excited to kind of venture into this new kind of conversation and stuff. Like Rebecca said, I'm the co-chair for the executive committee for the junior board, so I kind of just oversee most of the daily day-to-day of the junior board and its operations and stuff. And I also run the outreach committee as well, which is what this event is brought on to from. And so I'll kind of just let Noah and Stuart kind of take the lead here and, get to the fun stuff. So Noah, Stuart, have at it.
Sweet. I guess I could start and then Stuart, I can introduce you. I'm Noah Sallin. I work in the Chicago film scene. Stuart and I guess, had this idea because both of us went to film school, and then we realized that there's a lot about actually working in the industry that film school never even touches on. So that's what prompted us to make this. So personally, I graduated during COVID, and then I've worked in the industry for about 3 years now. I'm currently an office PA on Chicago PD. But I've done a ton of other stuff. I worked locations for forever. I was in the Bear season 1, and then I did some other projects in Ohio, and then I was in Tennessee last year. But I'm back on PD now, and I think I'll bounce this to Stuart.
Yeah, I'm Stuart Blue. I'm originally from Milwaukee, but moved down to Chicago about a year and a half ago after I graduated film school up there. I was very lucky to start PAing right away. And PA'd pretty consistently up until the strikes happened. And I've been on and off since then with smaller stuff and all that. But I worked on a couple great shows, including Saturdays and Dark Matter, both with a guest of ours today, Ali Suarez. So yeah, I think that I consider myself very lucky in a lot of aspects for being able to find work right away. And I know that not everybody is that lucky or has access to that right away. So we wanted to do this as a way to kind of just give a little bit more information and be a little bit more transparent about those who do want to start PAing or getting into locations, which is another topic that we're going to talk about, which is another entry level film industry job. But yeah, so at first I'm going to be interviewing Ali, who has a lot more experience than I do. But Ali, if you want to give us your background, introduce yourself, maybe some things that you've worked on and all that.
Yeah. So my name's Ali. I'm an assistant director, which means I'm part of the Directors Guild of America. I just so everyone knows, I did not study film. I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology, and then I became a high school math teacher. And I'm born and raised in Miami, so this is all in Miami. And then I was done with Miami and was like, I'm finally going to follow my dreams and be in the film industry. And I moved to Chicago. I knew one person here who was not in the film industry. And I kind of just jumped in and was like, I'm just going to try. I'm going to leap and hope the net that appears. And I did. So basically, what I did to get started in the industry was I went on the Chicago Film website and I saw everything that was open and filming currently, and pretty much they have like these general emails that you can send out or send to. I know not a single person responded to those when I asked about PA work, but they also had links to work as background in Chicago. So I started by just randomly working as background with the hopes of meeting people to be able to, put my name out there and start PAing. And that actually worked out because my first day as a background, it was like a really small background day. So we only had like 4 people with us. And we were all just sitting around for a long time because it was just like they basically needed us for our cars. So we were all just talking, and I was talking to one of the women who'd been in a background for a very long time, knew a lot of the PAs on Chicago PD. And she was just like, oh, just ask the PAs, just tell them that that's what you want to do. And so that's what I did. And that didn't come to fruition on that show. But then I worked as background on Chicago Med, and that kind of came to fruition. And I got very lucky that they happened to have needed like just a ton of PAs for a big lockup thing on like 3 days later. So she was like, all right, yeah, you're hired, like come with us for Friday. And I was like, okay. And then I didn't work as a PA again for a month. I kept, working as a background, and anytime. Oh, good question. Sorry. What does background mean? That is an extra. Most people refer to them as extras. I think the more politically correct term is background because they're background actors. So that's what a background is the extras in a film or in a TV show. Good question.
I think also this is in the chat now. Sorry, I just want to say it. We did put together just a little lingo sheet because there's probably going to be a few words here and there that some people might not be familiar with. And I actually think background is on there as well. If you go to that link in our chat, there should be a little PDF with a little lingo sheet for you. So that should be helpful. But if we say anything you guys don't know, please still feel free to put questions in there. But anyway, Allie, I'm sorry, continue.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so I kept getting background actor work, and then I just kept doing the same thing, just making it known to the people that I was working with, and not in an annoying way, but when the time felt right, and when I struck up a conversation with a PA that was like going well, and I would just say like, hey, just so you know, like I want a PA. I have no interest in doing this and being a background. I want a PA, and that's what I'm looking to do. And that kind of worked out for me. Something else I also did was I made business cards for myself with my face on it. And I think that kind of put me, it made me stand out at the very least. And, and while I was on set that day, I just, followed directions, and I listened to what they asked me to do. And I just showed that I was capable of taking directions, and they started hiring me. And then next thing I know, I'm staff on that show, and worked on Chicago Med for 3 seasons. Once I left Chicago Med, I went on to a season 1 show of 4400. It was on the CW. It got canceled after season 1. And then after that, I worked on the Bear season 1. And then I went to Saturdays as the key PA. And then while I was on Saturdays, I got into the DGA, the Directors Guild of America. And I also got very lucky when I was just like basically fully in the DGA, but not fully in yet. I was able to interview and got my first full-time AD job on Dark Matter. And then the strike happened, so I didn't work for a little bit. And now I'm working on a show called Emperor of Ocean Park, which is also a new show. So I don't know when that airs, but
Thank you very much for that lovely little insight. So I do want to back it up. I know that we have a lot of different people in here who have varying sort of knowledge of the film industry, might just be excited by the idea of it. Some people might have worked and whatever. So just as an overall rule, as we start to talk about PAing, what is a PA? Like, what does a PA do? What does the day-to-day look like? I think a lot of people are familiar that it is production assistant and it is an entry-level job. But what does the actual day-to-day look like for a PA, in your words?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to start by talking about if you're an additional PA. An additional PA is someone who's booked just for 1 day. Sometimes you get more than 1 day, but you're booked for just 1 day. And usually those PAs are what we call lockup PAs. And a lockup is just, if you're shooting a scene that's on a street, you need someone at the end of it to not let any random pedestrians or passerbys come into the scene, or also not to let crew walk in, because sometimes not all crew will realize like we're actively rolling right now, we're actively filming. So most of the time you'll start off as a lockup PA, and your day-to-day just consists of kind of standing at a street corner and waiting to hear more word and if they need you for something else. But if we get more into the nitty gritty of staff PA jobs, there's a few different positions. So there's key PA, which they're kind of like the head of all the PAs, and they tell the PAs where their lockups are going to be. They show them where they're going to be on the day. And on the day is another phrase that you'll often hear in film, which basically just means when we're actually filming. So you've got key PA, they're the head of all the PAs, and they oftentimes work a lot more closer to set. I kind of think of it as like a circle where it's like kind of start out your PA career out here, and then the higher up you go on the PA chain, you kind of get closer and closer to where the cameras actually end up being. So that's key PA, usually very close in that circle. And then you've got first team PA, which first team refers to all your cast on set. So first team PA is the one in charge of knowing where the cast are, inviting them to set, making sure hair and makeup is getting them touched up and that, they get wired from sound and all that stuff. Then after that, you've got your background PA. So your background is in charge of making sure the background are also ready, hair, makeup, wardrobe, that they're, they know where to be, that they get to set on time. And sometimes you get help with setting them as well. So showing them what they're going to do in the scene. And then the last staff PA position is the walkie PA, or sometimes walkie and distro PA. So walkies, we use them on set to communicate. And so the walkie PA is in charge of getting everybody walkies on the entire set. So they usually have a couple days of prep before we actually start filming. Everyone gets a walkie. And then anytime we're on set and we have people who aren't normally with us, like, hey, let's get a walkie for this person, or, oh, my walkie's not working, can I swap out my walkie? Or setting up the charging station for the batteries for the walkies. And then oftentimes they'll also be the distro person. So if anything comes from the office, they'll be the one who gets it and gets it to the right person that it belongs to. So aside from those like main positions, other things you can expect as a day-to-day as a PA is things like getting coffees for, people who can't step away from set, like people like your director, your script supervisor, sometimes first AD, because these are all people who oftentimes don't get the chance to step away from set. They're working and they don't get the chance to step away. So you'll get them coffees or waters or hot snacks. Hot snacks are like these mini meals that they kind of give out that people get a chance to eat in between the actual meal times. And then so a lot of lockups, a lot of waiting around until you find out that we're actually rolling, and then you're telling people to be quiet because if you hear any noise, obviously we don't want that to filter into what we're shooting. So a lot of times it's going up to people and be like, that kind of thing.
Right. It's not there are a lot of, and Noah, feel free to chime in too, but there are a lot of, day-to-day production assistant work that's not perhaps as glamorous as it may seem when you think of like working in the film industry. A lot of it could just be kind of standing by a door for 8 hours and just making sure people are very, very quiet while you're rolling and make sure that they can get in and out very quietly. So those are sort of kind of some things to expect when you're starting out. I remember my first day on set, and I had no idea what I was doing as a PA, was with Allie. Allie was on that show too, but my first day was standing in a parking lot and just telling people where the set was. So, it's a very important job and somebody has to do it, or else you're going to have a bunch of crew members and, extras or background actors or people not knowing where to go. So that is something that somebody needs to do, but it doesn't sound, totally glamorous. I just stood in a parking lot for a few hours and just kind of pointed everybody towards the right, pathway. But those are kind of some things to expect. That being said, Allie, you mentioned that you didn't go to film school. And Zach, also, I do see your question. We will get into sort of the more how to get on set in just a second. But I do want to ask, Allie, you said that you didn't go to film school.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though you should have? Do you regret not going? Or do you think that, because I'm sure that we have some people in here that might be in high school, like, do you think that, oh no, you don't necessarily need to, or what is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally feel like I didn't need to. And I think if what you're looking to do is be an assistant director, then you probably don't need to go to film school. And the reason is because a lot of what we do as assistant directors, you're learning on set, and you're probably not going to learn it in film school. But if you're looking to get into anything technical, lighting, you know, if you want to be a director of photography, if you want to be a director, if you want to be a camera person at all, then I think you should go to film school, because those are, or sound, anything like that, that's very technical, and you need to know the equipment. You need to understand how the equipment works and functions. Those things, I definitely think if that's what you're looking to do, then you should go to film school. If you already know, like, no, I want to be the logistic person, and I want to, you know, make the schedules, and I want to be, you know, just facilitating the creativity happening around me, then maybe you don't need to go to film school. But if you're also of the mind, I don't know what I want to do, I don't even know what exists on a set, then going to film school is definitely helpful, because you just get such an opportunity to, at least my understanding, because I didn't go, but you get such
Yeah.
an understanding of of the different positions that even exist, because you get to work on short films, which kind of in a way replicate the same structure that we have on a larger scale film. So I guess that's my answer is I don't think it's necessary, but I think if you're looking to get into a technical position, it's definitely helpful. It's also not absolutely necessary. I recognize it's a lot of money to go to film school most of the
Sure.
time. And there's other ways to learn about equipment and stuff. But I think it's most important for people who are looking to get into a technical position, or if you don't even know what you want to do, you know, it's kind of a good stepping stone to understand the filmmaking process, at least on a smaller scale.
Yeah, and I think, you know, PA work is sort of, for a lot of people, regardless of what position they end up in, a lot of people have started as PAs, even like camera guys or prop
Mhm.
guys, or, you know, like whatever position it may be. A lot of people started out as a PA too, and
Yeah.
as a PA, you know, we were talking about how it's not always incredibly um exciting. You know, there are some days where you're just kind of standing at a street corner or whatever. However, you also, because you're kind of running around so much, you have access to kind of getting a little sneak peek at every aspect of a set. Whereas, you know, like some of the camera team will kind of just stay within the camera team, and these guys will just stay within this. As a PA, because you have some running around to do, and you're getting coffees and you're getting this, you get a little bit of a sneak peek into all the different little biomes on set. So it can be a really great way to kind of discover, like, oh my God, that looks really cool, and I'm gonna go talk to those guys and see if I can weasel my way. And, you know, like there's an element of that that can be very exciting as a PA, that you kind of get a little sneak peek into everything.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, because I mean, almost everyone I knew that I was growing up with as a PA, we're either all ADs now, or we're all in different departments. So
Sure.
it's definitely such a, like, even if you are like, I don't want to AD, I know I don't want to AD, it's still a really good way to start off as a PA, to just make those connections, because you do get to talk to other people in different departments. So you can, first of all, ask them the questions you want to ask, like, what do you actually do? Like, what does your job encompass? Like, oh,
Totally.
hey, I noticed this piece of equipment. What is this for? You know, things like that. And then, like you said, you weasel your way in, and eventually someone's like, yeah, we'll get you on the permit list for this union, and we'll get you out on some days. And the
Sure.
next thing you know, you're following the path that you want to follow. So
And so,
definitely a lot of validity to that.
yeah, totally. And so now that you are an AD, or on the assistant directing team, which is, you know, a big step up from being a production assistant, I imagine that now you kind of have a little bit of say in who gets hired to be a production assistant on the things that you work on, or who comes on as an additional for a day. Um, what do you look for? You know, there's a lot of people who might be in here who will talk more about like specific resources to kind of try to get in touch with people. But, you know, there's a lot of people in here who might have no experience, and they really want to try PAing. What do you think you're looking for? What can help them stand out as somebody to get hired and come on for a day, from the perspective of somebody who's doing the hiring?
Yeah. So biggest thing, or two really big things. Number one is your attitude. If you are friendly and come to work and have a smile on your face, that already sets you apart from so many others. And then also your ability to take directions. Most of the time, and I hate to say this, but most of the time, especially as an AD, I want to say something once and know that it's taken care of, and not have to say it again, or 3 times would be, whew. But yeah, so big thing is taking directions. And I get to that a lot of times, you know, you're new as a PA, and I'm always very kind to when I know someone's new as a PA, and I try to explain. But even still, there's going to be people who aren't as kind or who don't have the time to explain. They'll just be like, hey, I need this, this, and this. And then you'll just be like, copy. And if you don't know how to get that answer, you just find hopefully another PA who's kind or who is approachable, and that can help you find the answer. So a creative problem solving, I think, is another big thing, is how do I find the answers? And especially when you're starting out as a PA, you're kind of like, at least I had this fear of like, I don't want to make a mistake because I want to keep getting hired. Like I remember one of my first big tasks was to get director's lunch. And that seems so simple, but I was like, oh my God, like, well, this guy's from LA, like he's probably gonna want all the healthy stuff. Like, how do I portion this? And I would just overthinking it. But as long as I got the lunch order, I went and made the lunch order, and I did it to the best of what I thought I would like my lunch to look like. And just following through and taking the direction, only needing to be asked once is a big thing. But obviously, if you have appropriate questions, ask the questions. So taking direction is a really big one. And that being said about lunches, I use that as a really big indicator if I like a PA or not, especially because I'm at base camp, which base camp is where the actors get ready and stuff. So a lot of times I get food delivered to me for the actors. So I'll send orders out to a PA to collect the orders to take back to base camp for me. So if someone can just get it and done in a timely fashion, have breakfast orders ready for me shortly after I ask for them, have the bags labeled, deliver them and have them just organized in a way. But that's a pretty big indicator for me, because that's oftentimes like, if we don't know you as a PA, we're like, they can get food because we all know what food looks like and can box it up. So that's a pretty big indicator for me. But yeah, big one is definitely just following directions and ability to, I guess, listen too. Because like there was one time I was on set, and there was he had been a PA for a while, but he'd never worked with us. So he didn't know anyone on our crew. He didn't know the writers. He didn't know the directors. And I hear someone call, hey, we're looking for the writer. And I watched this PA. I saw the writer. He was at craft services. And I watched the PA look him up and down and like note that he had headsets on and that he had scripts in hand. And he just immediately assessed that this is the writer and just asked him like, hey, are you this person? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, great. And then he responds, hey, I've got him. I'm bringing him into set. So just, ability to kind of, I guess, put things together quickly, take direction, take initiative, because it is easy to just be like, well, I don't know who anyone is, so I'm just going to stand here and not respond. But, if you can kind of make some, I guess, judgment calls and just do your best to figure out the answer. And even if you ask the wrong person, most of them will be like, oh, no, that's that guy right there. And then, boom, you got your answer. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you too, because I know that obviously you have a lot of experience too, and we're going to move over to locations work in a second. But do you have any? I mean, you've PA'd as well. Do you have any sort of wisdom coming in on that?
I just wanted to say like one note. So I guess like through this call, we're like mainly talking about there's like the production department, which like I guess most PAs in the call sheet would be under. And then like locations is like another great way you can get your start. And then like say I'm an office PA. Other departments, like more technical ones like grip, electric, camera, they often have PAs too, depending on the size of the project. We're not going to cover them, but those are also a possibility. Most of my work as a production assistant has been either as a locations production assistant or as an office production assistant. But I definitely like agree with you that the biggest thing is there is so much happening at one given moment. The biggest thing is being someone who can like pause, like interpret what you've heard and then be able to like execute that task. And there's usually so much happening. But I'd say in my experience, like most of the ADs I've worked with are really great about like Allie, what you said, like they recognize when someone's new, and then it's also about like finding like more experienced people on set, and then just asking questions is always the biggest thing.
Yeah, I to provide a little bit of an anecdote that might be helpful. I was talking about my first day on set, and I had gone to film school and stuff, and I had done little short films, at film school, and I'd been to like a film fest or two. But the first day that I was like, I'm gonna be a PA today, and It was terrifying. I mean, it was so overwhelming. I was very fascinated, but I had never seen that many people on a film set. I had never seen that much gear and truckloads of grip equipment and the cameras. I was like, I don't even know what that camera is. And I had to wear a walkie-talkie, and I wasn't used to that. And it was in a little earpiece. I couldn't understand what anybody was saying. It can be overwhelming at first, and I'm standing in a parking lot just like praying that nobody says my name because I have no idea what anybody's talking about. So it can be very overwhelming, but people, they generally, everybody wants the day to go by smoothly. So if you can be somebody who's just open to telling somebody like, hey, I don't know what's going on, could you help, hey, where do I need to be again? And that's over there. There were so many terms I didn't know, and I didn't know anybody. So just the ability to be able to stay calm and ask questions is always really, really, really great, from my experience. And the more willing you are to sort of ask questions, the more people will be willing to help, and then everybody's day just goes by easier and everything like that.
Yeah. Rebecca just put something really good in the chat, which is, I assume you should never say, so when can I move up? Or really, you want me to get coffee? Or do you want to read my screenplay?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, don't do any of that. It's funny. I think,
yeah.
Allie was talking about how it comes down to attitude. And anybody who's joined this webinar probably is very excited at the idea of being a PA. And that's like the best thing that can happen. And, is running around and getting coffee for people super exciting? No. But it's, for me, in my personal experience, I was like, I'm on a film set. This is so cool. I will get anybody a cup of coffee. That's awesome. I just got a coffee for the director. That's awesome. So, a lot of people, especially those in this, webinar, are probably really excited at the idea of working on set. And if you can kind of just hold on to that, and it will be very helpful. It'll make your day go by easier. It'll make everybody else's day go by easier. I wanted to.
And that being said, you never outgrow getting coffee for people. I'm an assistant director, and I still get coffee. So
there will always
part
be
of the
somebody
life
to get coffee for. Of course. So here's, I guess I wanted to just touch on, you talked about how when you moved up, you knew one person and you started doing extra work, but you also mentioned that you had like sort of emailed out some stuff and everything. I just wanted to kind of circle back and hone in on that a little bit. Like, let's say I'm from out of town. I just came into Chicago. I don't know anybody in the film industry here. I have no idea. I really want a PA. I'm very eager, but I don't know anybody, don't know where to turn. What is your advice for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the exact situation I was in. The route I ended up taking was to work as background, and it's very easy, at least in a small market or smaller market like Chicago, where we don't hire extras that are SAG, which SAG is the Actors Guild. So like in LA, there's certain rules about all the extras have to be, like a certain amount of the extras have to be SAG before you can then hire non-SAG or non-union extras. But in markets like Chicago, you don't need to be SAG in order to be an extra. So that's how I got started. And I would just, talk to the background PA when the time was right. If they're running around busy, I'm not going to be like, hey, I want to be a PA. But then, when they were like kind of, chill, yeah, I could stop and be like, hey, I want to be a PA. Totally. How do I do this?
So you're saying that kind of anything that can get you near the set, even if it's having to be a background actor, even if that's not what people want to do, it is an excuse to get them close to set where they could then talk to people. How would you go about looking at background work? Are there any resources that I've seen stuff on like Facebook before.
Yeah. And I know Zach asked for the website, and I will happily grab the website once Noah starts talking a little bit more. But so if you just Google Film Chicago office, or whatever city you're in, film blank office, the office will come, or the website will come up, and then somewhere in there it'll say what's filming here. And then so that's where I got all those resources. I know particularly in Chicago, there's Facebook groups you can join. So 4-Star Casting, 4 Star Casting, they do a lot of the casting in Chicago. and you can submit yourself as a background through there. Someone else just yeah, Chicago PD and Fire have background Facebook pages as well. So they literally will just post and be like, we're looking for a background to work these days for this kind of look. So, and most of the time it's very general, like 18 to 60-year-olds,
Yeah.
pedestrians or whatever. So that's a way to start it. And that being said, you don't need to start. That's just my personal experience with
Sure.
starting as background. I've heard stories, and here's the thing too, like, you meet 100 people, you will probably get 100 different stories on how they started. I've heard stories of people who saw something filming on the corner and they pulled over and they just found the PA that was at the farthest of the lockups and talked to them, and just said, hey, like, I really want to be a PA. I'm in film school. How do I do this? Can I give you my information? And, and sometimes those things don't come to fruition. Sometimes they do. But, I think the big thing to remember is sometimes it takes a while to get your foot in the door, but don't stop trying. And just look for people who can connect you there and put it out there that that's what you want. Like, I am, you can even say that I am a production assistant and I want to be getting production assistant work. How can I do this? Can I give you my information?
I think, in my experience too, when I moved on, I was lucky enough to know somebody that had worked a little bit on some shows and stuff like that. But I do also remember just going home and Googling, like, what is filming in Chicago right now? And usually, if there's more high profile stuff, it might not be that accessible, but usually, you can find emails for the productions that are shooting, and it's a great way to just reach out and say, hey, I really want a PA and everything like that.
Yeah. And I guess to answer, because this is kind of in the same realm, this other question, is attending film festivals a good way to meet people to get on set? I personally have not really attended many film festivals, but I don't see why not. I mean, there's lots of people in the industry who do attend film festivals. And again, it's just about striking up conversations and having personable connections. And then as conversations evolve, you say, like, well, I'm actually looking to become a production assistant. Like, do you have any connections? And and sometimes you might even be talking to a camera operator. Like, don't shy away from that, because a lot of them started as PAs themselves, or they know people who can get you hired. So anyone that you talk to who's working actively in the film industry, just put your information out there, give them your information, be responsive to your emails and to your phone and stuff like that. And just, put yourself out there as much as you can.
Totally. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I wanted to, I know, Allison, I know your camera's off, but I also know that you do have some experience PAing and everything like that. If you'd like to tag in, I would also love to hear about how maybe you got started. Even if you knew people, just kind of what prompted your first days on set and kind of how you went about that. And then after that, I would like to talk to Noah a little bit about doing locations. We'll get into that. But I would love to know what your experience was.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try and keep it quick. But yeah, I went to DePaul. I was in the DePaul Film School. And there was actually a really great mentorship program that they had when I was a freshman called, it was the DCC mentorship program, where you got paired with a senior as a freshman, and then you got to ask them all of your burning questions about film. And I just really connected with my mentor. He brought me onto some student sets. Then the people on the student sets liked me, so then they brought me on the indie sets. And then I met some film professionals that were working on the indie sets, and they're like, oh, you should come work on these professional sets that I'm working on. So it's kind of like you said, Allie, like, there's a million different ways. And I actually did want to note on the film festival aspect. I know someone asked a question. I actually work for the Chicago International Film Festival, and I have volunteered with them for like 4 years now. And I think it's a great way to meet people in the industry. When I was working, I ran into so many people that I knew from working on sets in Chicago, and I was like, oh, what are you doing here? And they're like, I'm in film. I like to enjoy film. And so I do think it's a great way to meet people, volunteering or just attending. But yeah, it's just like, there's so many different ways. And like Allie said, you just got to keep trying. You'll find your way on. And I feel like something that's really important to remember is the idea of passing it forward, because there's always going to be somebody that takes a chance on you, sticks their neck out for you, vouches for you, and like that's how you get your start. And it's always important, I feel like, to remember, hey, then the next time you meet another earnest PA after you've had your first, few years in the industry, like it's time to pay it forward for that next
Totally.
young professional. That's definitely what I'd like to put out there.
Totally. And then before jumping over to you, Noah, I just wanted to ask both Allie and Allison, you guys can both answer this, and maybe you have a funny anecdote. But, I remember talking to people when I started PAing, and I would, once I was doing it for a while, could complain sometimes that there was a different PA and like, oh, he's not, not really he's not doing it that great and everything. And I remember having a conversation with people that aren't in film, and they would be like, how could you be a bad PA? Like, aren't you just getting coffee and standing in lockups? And to me, it made so much sense, because I was like, no, you don't get it. It's about the vibe, man. But there's truth to that. Like, it does sound a little bit like, so, I talk to family and stuff, and they're like, don't you just get coffee, whatever. Do either of you maybe have an anecdote or anything on, obviously no names or anything like that, but just an example of like kind of what not to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could go first, Allie. I have one as well.
Okay. I don't know if it's a specific anecdote, but just certain behaviors that I know that caused me to say I'm never hiring this person again. Number one, if you are talking all the time to anyone, like if you are constantly chatting and you're not listening to your walkie that's in your ear, my rule as a PA, this comes first. And any good PA, this is the telltale sign of a really good PA, right? You'll be having a conversation with someone, and then a PA will just go and then walk away because we heard something in the walkie, and now we have to go get water for someone, or someone needs a coffee, or like we're looking for someone, So, and I've also watched PAs from afar that I am talking to them, and I'm like, hey, blah, 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 can you go and get this? And I watch them talking. Hey, blah, 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 talking. That's like such a bad sign of a PA. Like, you're just chatting it up, and that's what you're so involved in, that you're putting your work aside in order to have conversations. That's, for me, the number one telltale sign of a bad PA that I will probably never hire again.
I will say it was very, very confusing when I started to always have something in your ear where people were chatting. Not always that you needed to respond, because there's a lot of people talking, but sometimes it was hard for me to separate talking to somebody in front of me and also listening to this. And it felt very weird to, in the middle of a conversation with somebody in front of you, just be like, yeah, or just walk away because you heard something in your ear. But everybody does it. Like, it's not just the PA. That's just kind of something that happens. And it felt so weird at first. And I didn't want to just stop the person in front of me from talking. So I'd kind of be like, but really the best thing you can do is, as soon as you hear something, is just walk away and focus in and everything. So that's quite funny. Do you have anything, Allison, like anything specific or any behaviors or anything?
I've definitely seen a lot of things. The thing that immediately came to mind is, especially, this is like, whether just even a lockup PA is gonna make it or not, is how careful they are about leaving their lockup. Because I feel like I recently had an experience where I was doing a lockup with, like, we were doing a 4-point, and my other 3 cohorts were fine, but like the person across the street from me was never in his lockup, never where he needed to be. And I then got swamped with people coming from 2 directions. We were on the busy side of the street. And so I had to cover his side and my side. And every time, like, he would just wander away trying to talk to like a different department. Like, you could just feel that, like, he didn't want to move up in the AD route, but then he wasn't really putting in the work to show, like, hey, I have a good work ethic, so X department should hire me. It's like, right, he's just trying to link up with other people and, completely neglecting the job that he was there to do.
Totally. I will say it feels very strange, but sometimes, you'll have a higher up when you're a PA say, I need you to go stand on that corner and, X, Y, and Z, and tell people, pedestrians that they can't be there while we're rolling, or, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And if somebody tells you to do that, my rule of thumb is like, I will not leave there until that same person tells me I don't have to be there anymore. Because, you know, as soon as you walk away, even if it's been an hour or whatever, the person that told you to be there still thinks that you're there.
Yeah.
So if they need something that's over there, they're like, well, Stuart's over there. Hey, Stuart, can you? And then all of a sudden you're not there. You know, it
Right.
sounds ridiculous, but I always try to, like, if your higher up tells you to be in a spot, you should probably just stay in that spot
Well,
until your higher up tells you that you don't have to be there anymore. So
and there's ways to leave if you need to.
yes,
You just have to tell people like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. Can somebody cover me? They will put someone there to cover you. You can go do your whatever you need to do, and it's fine. But like this guy would just like wander off and be like, oh yeah, sorry, I was 10-1. And I'm like, why didn't you tell any of us? Like you can't just leave.
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And 10-1, just so everyone knows, means that you're going to the bathroom.
Oh yes, that is on our lingo sheet. 10-1 is
Yes.
restroom, which is funny. I had no idea what that meant. So I do want to transition over to Noah for just a few minutes, and I'm seeing some really great questions. So we'll hold on. I mean, keep sending them, but we'll talk to Noah a little bit about locations work, and then we can kind of get into these questions and we can all sort of answer them for a few minutes. But Noah, I just want to, because I haven't worked to locations myself personally. I know that that's something that you've done. So we've talked a lot about being a production assistant on set, that sort of entry level, what to expect and kind of what you'll be doing day to day. Could you kind of give us just the rundown of what, like, I didn't even know what the Department of Locations was when I started. Could you kind of give us a rundown of like what Locations does, who they are, and sort of what being a PA for them looks like? Oh,
Right.
also,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just saw this. I'm not seeing a lingo sheet. Would anybody be able to resend the link? Oh, thank you, Alex.
Oh, sweet. Thanks.
I hope that worked out. But anyway, sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I explain it like imagine you're watching a scene of two characters like sitting on a park bench. If you're like watching it on TV, all you see is like the characters on the park bench. So of course, there's a lot of work that goes into that. And there's what we call the footprint, which is like the total, like I guess like square footage that the film crew operates out of. So if you see like two characters on like a park bench, you have a location scout who finds the park bench. They give it to like the production department. They send it around to make sure it's like the look they want. Once they take care of that, the greater locations department goes, okay, if we're filming at a park bench, it means we got to get a permit from the city because we're filming in a park. If we're near a major road, we got to see if we got to shut the road down for the day. Part of that means like, are we near any bus stops where there's gonna be buses pulling in every day, or we'd like interrupt someone's commute? And then you go, well, if it's a park, are there gonna be like any festivals happening in the park? Is there any, like, so the locations department, like during pre-production, their job is like finding the filming locations and then asking like every single question that could possibly be asked about it. Is like, say do like old people come and hang out in the park a lot and they have like a weekly event, would we be disrupting that? It gets to a thing where literally knowing the names of the neighbors' dogs, because it's been like a few shows where one of the first ADs will say like, I hear a dog barking, and then a locations person will go, oh yeah, no, that's Max, we have Max's owner's contact info, it's all good.
So just to sort of reiterate what you're saying, it's almost like Locations is there to make sure that the production can actually happen in a sense.
Yeah,
Almost like if you've ever seen those, you know, if you've ever seen signs kind of on a street, you know, that says like no parking here on this day from this time to this time, because that might be because nobody should park there because we're going to film there. And it's Location's responsibility, right, to kind of put those signs up and make sure that that street's going to be empty so that the production can come in and do their work.
Yeah, so I remember like my first locations gig, like my boss described it as the production assistants work for the production department. Your job is working for the locations department. So you work for your department and then all of the neighbors and then whoever we're like renting from.
Sure.
so a big part of that is like on longer term shows. I did this one Light Years, which was an Amazon thing that we shot a lot of it at like a farmhouse in Crystal Lake. And a big part of that was getting to know all the neighbors on a personal level. Like they'd invite us over for barbecues after the show. One of the guys, he used his house as one of the main characters' neighbors' houses. And then he also rented out his yard to park all the big trucks in. So at a point, like he was on set every day, just hanging out. We just gave him a crew badge because he was there every day if he was supposed to be or not. Um, so I'd say within like pre-production, locations job is finding all the locations and then answering all those questions beforehand. And then during production, it could be something like I mentioned, oh, a dog's barking, let's see who it is. There's a weird noise. Someone find out where it's coming from.
Sure. So you guys are sort of more of a liaison between the crew and the actual sort of outside world in a sense.
Definitely.
Like people living nearby or if there's an angry pedestrian who doesn't like that there's a film being, that sort of thing. So as a locations PA, excuse me, are you kind of day to day? Are you kind of the guy that has to go and sort of talk to the neighbors if they need it and that sort of stuff? Or are you more like setting up cones and setting up signs, or what's sort of the day to day for you?
It's all of it. Like if you work in locations, there'll be days where you'll be on set the whole time. And then there'll be say other prep days where you're the ones putting up like the leaflets that say like, hey, we're filming here. It'll be like day or night. Usually they'll post warnings too if it's like they're shining like bright lights in someone's window. They want to make all the neighbors known of that. And then if there's any like elements, so like simulated gunfire, fire, smoke, rain, all the neighbors have to be known. They got to know about that. It is also like a lot of random problem solving. Like there was one job I worked where the hair and makeup trailer had to be put on set, which isn't normal, but they didn't have a setup for water. They needed to fill up their washing machines. So we had become friends with the neighbors, and we made a deal with them that we'd take water from their hose and we'd have to pay them, but they said, don't pay us because then we become like a vendor. Just like give us ice cream gift cards. So we gave them a stack of ice cream gift cards at the end of the week as a thank you for letting us take the water from their hose.
Oh, that's hysterical. That's so funny. And so when you started working sort of in the industry, did you start as a locations PA right away, or were you a production assistant? So
I started like during COVID. It's like when I graduated and there was no work for the longest time. And then I actually found my first job was a COVID PA on South Side. And that was through Crew Up Chicago Film. I'd say most departments would hire people either through word of mouth, or all the Chicago people I knew weren't working yet. But this one was, the COVID team was hired out of New York, so they didn't know anyone. So they just reached out to me through a Facebook group. And that's how I found that one. And then after meeting people on set, I was like, what are like entry-level positions? And then one of the locations guys was like, hey, here's my friend. He might be hiring on this show. And then Light Years needed people. So right after Southside, I jumped on Light Years, and then I worked in locations for a long time after that.
Nice. Okay, that's great. Yeah, and we might as well just sort of touch briefly on it because I know it's what you do now. But the sort of last branch of PAing is being a PA, an office PA. Do you want to just touch on that really quickly? I know that's what you're doing now, but some people might be interested in kind of knowing about that.
Yeah, so currently I'm an office PA on Chicago PD, and like the difference in that is I don't have a walkie. We only see set if we have to like run something to set, or if they're like literally filming in the street outside of our office. But our main priorities are any official communications that have to get out, that's on us. So the call sheets are the biggest ones. That's a document that comes out saying where the filming locations will be the next day, when the crew call is, and then actors if they have different calls. There's certain departments if they have different calls. And the biggest thing is it has to come out in a certain window of time. If it's too early or too late, You won't get a call from the other managers. You'll get a call from legal. And then if you're lucky, you might get to talk to your friends working for NBC in LA. But the biggest thing as an office PA is working more on the behind the scenes logistical side. We're working prep on every episode. And if we're working production on an episode, it's usually because, say, script pages have changed. And that'll mean like the writers are working out of LA and they'll say a new script just dropped. So it'll come to me. I'll say, oh, we're doing that scene. It's happening in 30 minutes. So then my job is to let the ADs know if they haven't caught it at the same time, to let them know to tell their PAs. And then we make new sides, which are the printed script pages of the day, and then run those to set. So that just happened last week. It was very stressful, but we got it out on time. Everyone was good. So I'd say, yeah, they're two very different positions. Obviously, locations, you're literally outside every day. Office PA, you're inside every day. But a big part of it is a lot of the same problem solving, just more within the pre-production side and like answering questions beforehand. I'm trying to think of like other good stuff to oh, I guess like another important thing is like with the footprints, when I was working locations, say we're filming at a cemetery was one scene, and the cemetery didn't have enough parking for the whole crew. So my job was to drive around to local churches in the area to see if we could rent out their parking lot. And we basically told them, like, when you see the movie, they'll be in the cemetery, but the whole crew is a whole other thing. So they were cool with it. And they said, oh, you can park all your cars here. How many will it be? And I told them, and I said, but we also have all these trailers too, and all these big trucks. And the way that our boss told us to explain it is, imagine your neighborhood is quiet one day, and the next day there's a circus, and then the day after that it's back to normal. So that's how we try to keep it realistic. But apart from that,
a pretty good description. That's a pretty good way to kind of let people know what they're getting themselves into. Great. Well, thank you so much. I would love to move on to some of the questions that people have. Is that cool with you guys? Is there
sweet.
Yep.
Good? So I see, I'm just gonna answer this one, or I want to talk about this one first because I saw one person ask, what should I wear on my first day as a PA? And somebody else asked, I don't know if it's been addressed yet, every unique PA, but are there certain supplies such as gaffer tape, batteries, etc., that every PA needs to have on them aside from their walkie-talkie? I think that's a good thing to get into. I'll say, I'll answer for myself really quickly, and then I'd love to know what you guys think. When I first started, I was very nervous about being underprepared. So I had like it was sort of like a little over the shoulder bag, and inside of it I had like, oh god, I don't even remember what I used to carry in there, but it was like chapstick and a couple band-aids and some like hand lotion and an iPhone charger and headphones for a break. I guess it was just sort of this little hodgepodge of like emergency supplies. And then when you get to set, somebody will give you a walkie-talkie. That's not anything that you need to bring. And then the batteries for the walkie-talkies will also be provided to you by somebody on set. The more that I was on set, the less I would kind of bring to set with me, because I realized that there's usually other people that have all of those things. Like there is a medic on set, so there really was no need for me to bring my own band-aids. Like there is somebody who's got more than enough to take care of that. So it sort of kind of slimmed down more and more. As far as what to wear, in my personal experience, anything that you can be comfortable standing in and then walking around in for 12 hours is fine. Really comfy shoes is the biggest one. As a PA, you're probably not going to be handling any big equipment yourself or anything very heavy. So it's not like you need boots or like steel-toed boots or anything, like some of the rigging grips might have to wear or whatever. Anything comfortable that you can wear for 12 hours and walk around for 12 hours is probably the best. But Allie, do you have any wisdom on that, kind of what to wear, what to bring?
Yeah. things that I keep on my person standard, in my back pocket, I always keep a pen, a Sharpie, and a highlighter. So I just keep those on me standard. And then in my backpack, which my backpack might not always be on me when I'm on set, but it's easily accessible. I can just walk somewhere real quick and go to it. I do always keep an extra pair of socks because you never know when it's going to rain and now suddenly you're in wet socks. So I always have an extra pair of socks in my bag. I also have a couple things that are like personal to me, but I have really bad ankles. So on the rare occasion, my ankles are just really killing me on a day, and I will always have a ankle support strap in my backpack. I have extra pens, extra highlighters. I always, this is a really good one, is to always have a battery pack charger on you, like how Stuart said, an iPhone charger. But if you have a battery pack, that's super helpful, especially like me personally. I'm at the point where like 4 hours into my day, I'm getting down to like 30% on my phone battery every single day. But I'm on my phone a lot just because of my specific position. Usually more like towards the end of the day that your phone might start dying, and you'll have texts come in from your department. So you'll want to keep something that you can charge your phone on and keep your phone on with you. But yeah, big things for me are just a pen, a Sharpie, and a highlighter. And then in my bag, I will keep backups of those. So in case I lose it for whatever reason. Once you've started working more full time, you definitely don't need to have one when you first start. You'll end up buying yourself a surveillance headset. So that's just what plugs into your walkie so you can hear and you can talk at the same time. And wearing. So yeah, definitely comfy shoes, and comfy shoes are going to mean something different to everybody. It took me a while when I first started working to find the right shoes that my feet wouldn't be hurting at the end of the day. So you'll find your own pairs of shoes for that eventually, but just be aware you will be on set probably standing for like 12 to 14 hours a day and walking around and stuff like that. And then also always check the weather, especially like in Chicago. I mean, 2 weeks ago we had 0-degree weather. I was prepared for everything. I bought myself heated socks, and I had heated hand warmers, and I had like my balaclava and all the stuff on me. And I do, with that being said, always keep what I call my winter go bag on me, another extra pair of warm socks, extra pair of boots, extra sweater, extra gloves, extra scarf. Like I just have, but that's just me because I'm like, I do not want to be freezing to the point where I'm like going numb. So I always have those extra on hand for myself. And then when it comes to summertime, I have my rain go bag. So I have rain boots and rain pants and a rain jacket. But these are things that you can like build up eventually. But long story short, keep or whatever's, like Stuart said, whatever's going to be comfortable for you, but check the weather in advance to know what to be prepared for, in case you do have rain coming up, or in case it's the dead of winter, but we suddenly have a 50-degree day and you're sweating because you wore thermals. Or, in the summertime, check to make sure if it's going to be 85 degrees out all day and you're on location and you're standing outside, you're probably going to want like shorts and a tank top kind of situation, or a t-shirt, rather than putting on a long sleeve and jeans. So just being prepared for the weather and whatever's going to be comfortable to stand for 12 to 14 hours.
Totally. I want to get into this because I've seen sort of a couple different questions or messages that are sort of pertaining to the same idea. Would you, and this is open to kind of anybody here, if I want to get, if I'm somebody that wants to get into PAing, what is your advice on like, can I make a living wage by just PAing? Because, we've talked about there are PAs that get staffed. They're there full time. They're there 5 days a week with the rest of the crew. And then there are some PAs who just get brought on for a day or two here and there onto different shows to work. If I'm not staffed and I'm just, trying to get out there, should I keep a second job? Should I go all out? Is it something that I can make a living wage on? I guess that's open to anybody. I don't know, Noah or Allison, if you guys want to chime in on that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, speaking as someone who, like, I've only been staff on one show, so I've been working for a long time just doing the gigs. And yeah, you definitely want to have like another job, but you don't want to have like a really established job where like you have to be there like certain hours every week. It's better to find something much more flexible. There's a lot of like, you know, if you work at a larger retail chain, like I used to work at Shake Shack, and you know, like where you can have the flexibility of like, yeah, like I just got offered a day, like in a week, like you can't give them the 2 weeks, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to work, you know, things like that, where you can have the flexibility to, you know, do the work that you're actually trying to do for your career versus the work you need to do to make money and survive. I would definitely expect to have another supplemental income, because, you know, some, like I went like probably 2 months once without working. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think in my experience, it's good, you know, if you can retain some sort of like I'm working as a barista right now while, you know, but yeah, I'm not full-time PAing on anything, so I have a barista job, and that's great because it's very nice, but it also has the flexibility of, you know, everybody kind of knows that PAing is what I like to do. So if a day comes up here and there, it's very flexible with a close team to be like, can you guys cover me so I can go do this? That's a luxury, but if you can find maybe some sort of service industry or something as you're starting, something that's flexible, something that you can maybe have people cover once in a while, that would be great. And that being said, I saw somebody asked how far in advance do PAs get hired or background actors get hired, because we kind of talked about doing both as a start. Allie, you know, you're somebody that does have a bit of a say in like hiring and all that. How would you answer that? What is your answer to that? How far in advance do
Yeah. It all depends. So I'll give you the example of this show I'm on right now. So we're just moving to our new episode, which means we just got our budget approved for how many additionals we're allowed to have. That just came out yesterday. So for anyone who we're trying to get hired to work on Monday or Tuesday, like you might have gotten advance notice as much as yesterday. But you know, for the days that are farther out, where we're like, we need 10 additionals 2 weeks from now, you might have 2 weeks notice, like, hey, this is the day we want you to work. But there's plenty of times too where, you know, day before, God forbid something happens, your apartment floods, you are sick or whatever, and a PA calls out. We might be looking for PAs the night before, the day before, to hire you for the next day to like fill in a spot. Or, oh, we just randomly we changed the location, like our schedule changed. Now we're on the crazy location and we need the 10 PAs tomorrow. You might get hit up the day before. So it could be as little as the day before. It could be as far in advance as a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or something, depending on how far in advance the scheduling person wants to hire. And same thing for background. Like I've definitely seen a lot of background calls that are like a week in advance, but then there's ones where it's like, we need people for tomorrow or 2 days from now. So yeah, definitely I would agree with everything about having something that's flexible. You know, if you're doing something like working at a restaurant or something like that, you know, something that's mostly the weekends, because we don't film on the weekends, and then it kind of keeps your weekdays available. And then also I think just having open communication, like Stuart said, with your team of people that you are in that job for, is like, if they know this is what you're trying to do, hopefully they're a group of people who are willing to let you take a day off or to have someone cover you to do that. But if you are staff people, you're going to work anywhere from 60 to 70 hours a week. I highly recommend you do not keep a second job outside of that. I've seen people do it. They almost always end up quitting that second job because it's too much. I've tried to make this mistake just now, and I've had 5.5 years of experience. During the strike, I started working as a math tutor, and you know, just like 3 to 4 hour shifts a day, so nothing crazy. And I was like, you know what? I never want to get this bad on money again. I'm going to keep this job, and I'm just going to work Sundays 12 to 3. And already second weekend, I was like, nope, fuck this, I'm quitting. So I already let that go because it's just too much when you're working full time.
Totally.
But definitely if you're still in the day playing, and day playing just means working when they call you. If you're a day player, keep the second job or whatever it is you need to financially do to keep yourself afloat. But if you're working full time, I highly do not recommend getting a second job.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you have the luxury of being able to just work on the weekends, or mostly the weekends, you know, maybe Friday, Saturdays, Sunday, something like that. You know, if it's a restaurant job, if it's a service job, something where that's kind of the busy time anyway, that's always really great because it's very, very rare that a show's going to film on Saturday and Sunday. The days that you will be needed is mostly Monday through Friday. The other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, the first time you get asked if you can make that and you make a good impression, they're probably going to ask for you back again very quickly after. That's what happened with me. I got asked like the night before if I could go additional, and I said sure, because I was lucky enough to have a day open and got along really well with the team. And so then they asked me if I could come back like 2 days later. So, you know, it gets easier the more you do it. It gets more consistent the more you do it. But yeah, if I would recommend definitely keeping a second job once you're starting, and if you can mostly focus that other job on the weekends or towards the weekends, that's probably a good thing to do.
I see a good one here. John asks, would any of you recommend working as a PA over the summer job, or would most PA jobs run too long term or short term for something like that? I'd say most like shows, it's totally different. It's based on show. Like the Dick Wolf shows are, I've heard them referred to as school in Chicago because they kind of run on similar to like a school schedule. But I'd say I'd say if it's like a 10 episode, it's probably 2 to 3 months. If it's like a movie that's like entirely based out of one city, it could probably be 2 to 3 months. If it's like more like prestige TV, that might be longer, like 4 or 5 months, but they will tell you up front like how long the actual show runs, but it just depends on what project you're on.
I guess it's
And
also,
I guess the question is for people in school. Sorry. I guess that question is for people who are in school. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a great way to make use of your summertime, and whether it's day playing or staffing. And there's plenty of people too who, when you get hired, you can say like, hey, listen, I'm in school and I plan to go back, you know, whatever the date is, September 1st or whatever. And some people will still hire you and then just replace you when you leave. Or some people might be like, well, no, we'd rather have someone for run-up show, but we'll keep you, we can hire you for day playing. And then too, you might even find yourself like, why am I going to film school? I have my job now, you know, so that happens too.
totally. And I think it's also worth noting that, and any of you can cut me off if this is wrong, but I think it's worth noting that there's probably more work in the summer than there is in the winter. I mean, most shows take a winter break at some point anyway. But as far as filming outside and all that stuff, it's just more accessible once the weather starts to get a little bit nicer. So that kind of works out for if you're in school. There's probably more going on during the summertime than during the wintertime anyway. So that's good. I see a cool question here. Is there any difference between working on a TV set as a PA and working on a film, like a movie set as a PA? I've only done TV, so I don't know if I can speak on the difference. I've heard there might be some differences. Allie, you might be or maybe Noah. I don't know. Does anybody, can anybody make it the comparison?
I've also only worked on TV, but I have asked a lot of people about working on a film. My understanding job-wise and job description, no, there's no difference. The big difference is, from what I understand, is that, so a TV show, right? Episodes are coming out, like episodes are being written while you're working, whereas a TV show, or sorry, a film, the whole thing is written, the whole thing is prepped. So once the schedule comes out, it's very rare that that's going to change. Whereas, you know, in working in TV, once you're finishing up an episode, you're starting to get the schedule for the next episode. So you're finding out new information as it's being written. Whereas a film, most of the time it's like, this is what we're filming, this is how we're doing it, and that's it. Also, a big difference I've heard is just how much content you film in a day versus a TV show. TV, there's a saying that they say good enough for TV, which is you're banging it out, right? We're ripping episodes through, so it's good enough for TV. Like we sometimes you do. I've done 8 pages in a day filming for TV shows, whereas a movie, it's a lot more likely you're going to get 1-page films, maybe 2 pages, you know. And especially depending on what movie it is, if there's a lot of stunts, if there's a lot of logistics involved, if there's a lot of actors in a scene, they'll spend a whole day, you know, getting all the shots that they want because they have the time to do it. Versus a TV show, it's like, no, we're going to do that 10 actor scene in addition to 10 more pages of you know, or whatever. So as far as the actual work process goes, there's not a difference, but just more of the flow of your days and your schedule is different. But work wise, no, there's not really a difference.
I've also, this is sort of connecting to what you're saying, but I've heard people refer to TV shows are very much like a producer's medium and movies are very much a director's medium. So in the sense that kind of what going off what Allie was saying is that if you're working on a movie, it's probably more likely that, yeah, you could, there's you can kind of dig in. It might maybe there's one scene that takes a lot of time to kind of really get in on and try these different things. And there's, it's just a different vibe. And TV is a little bit more of a machine that needs to we need to get X amount of pages done right now. Boom, 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 boom. Which can be good. It can be fun to kind of thrive in that energy. But that's what I've heard. I don't know, Allison and Noah, have you guys done movies or just TV?
Yeah, it's weird because I had a producer explain it to me once where I was working on a movie in Chicago, but it was only in the city for 3 weeks. And the producer was saying that
you can name drop it. It's actually a pretty cool movie.
Oh yeah, it was The Killer. It was a David Fincher Netflix thing came out this past fall. But one of the producers, he was like a supervising location manager, so we all took us out to dinner afterwards, and he was saying that he wasn't from Chicago, but he'd worked on a lot of Chicago stuff. Like he did like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman when it was here. And he talked about how he's like, yeah, I live in LA right now. And LA knows that Chicago obviously has TV shows. We have TV crews, but they just don't have film producers who live in Chicago. They all live in LA. So he said it's like a whole thing where it's between that and incentives, where even though the on-set work for most people will be not that different between TV and film, it really depends on where the money for the thing is coming from. So we could have more movies in Chicago, but Chicago, the TV town, I'd say, even though the actual work is not that different for most on-set crew. If it's pre-production, TV shows, like Allie said, the budgets come out way faster and they're doing tech scouts on a more regular basis. And if it's a movie, they just do one, which is they just go to all the film locations. But personally, I feel like Chicago would be great if we had more movies. But we have TV shows, which is cool. But I don't know why people think we can't make movies because we have
there's a really great question that somebody submitted anonymously, which says, how exactly do you link your PA work together? Is there a formal way to reference or on a resume? How do you go about that? So I think what they're referring to is if you kind of day play on a bunch of different shows, you just I got a day on this show, I did a day here, I did a day here, I did a day here. How do you sort of compile that into work experience on a resume or something like that? And Allie, you might be able to sort of answer that, as I'm sure you've looked
at it. I wonder if I can share my screen. Let me see if I can. There we go. Okay, share. So this is my resume. At the top is just my name, contact information, and where I live, so in Chicago. And then I do have this one broken up between my AD experience and my production assistant experience. So, but the big difference between a regular resume versus a film resume is you're not putting what you did. We all know what these roles consist of. So it's just what did you work on? What was the role, the name of your role? And then you have your UPM, first ADs, and key second ADs, and that you can all get off the call sheet information. So when it comes down to production assistant experience, I've had to cut mine down because it no longer fits on one page. But when you're in here, you can just write, even if it's been, 5 different things that you worked on as an additional, you would just write whatever it is you worked on, and then additional set PA. And then, again, list who you worked with. So there are people that I've met who have just a ton of additional stuff. I used to have more additional stuff on here, but I've been fortunate enough to mostly work staff positions. So as I get more of my assistant director experience, I've been able to cut down on my PA experience, and hopefully this will one day just be all AD experience. But yeah, so that's basically how you link it together. And then also when you're working a lot as an additional, you don't really need a resume because it's just people texting you and being like, hey, are you available to work this day? The resume will come more into play if you're ever going to interview for a full-time job on a show. And at that point you can just and it certainly doesn't help to do it in advance, but you can just go through all your call sheets and whip up a resume real quick. And these are the basic points that go into your resume is, what was the name of the project I worked on? What was my role on that project? And who were the big players on it? UPM first ADs and key second ADs. I think at one point too, I used to have second ADs on here, which is just another level of AD. But again, as I had to cut it down to try to get my resume to fit on one page, I ended up getting rid of those. And then just like down here, kind of some other stuff. I always put that I used to be a math teacher just because that seems to impress a lot of people. So I always keep that on my resume. And then special skills, I have that I'm fluent in Spanish. Production report, that's a specific kind of thing that ADs work on. Exhibit G, another thing for ADs. Background daily breakdown, that's something that if you're a background PA or whatever, it's just another piece of paperwork that comes down to it, and just some other things that are there. So
Awesome.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
I don't know if it did.
I see one person just asked too, how would you suggest putting commercial work on their resume? Would you kind of just
same
just
I think same way. I personally have never worked on a commercial, although I really want to, because I hear it's a different kind of, what the heck is happening. But I think it would just go in the same thing. It just would be, so this says Saturday season 1. That's a clear indication that this is a TV show. I've seen two people where they'll do something like, if they have a lot of, they've worked on TV shows and films and commercials, they'll put something like, because oftentimes your commercial will have a name. So if it's like Coca-Cola commercial, you would put Coca-Cola and then commercial and then your role on it. And obviously people understand in this industry that if you're working commercials, we know that's limited to a few days. Or you could even have, I think, a separate section of commercial work, and then you would just put what it was that you worked on.
totally.
And I've seen different versions too, where it's all just like one line going down here. So it'll be like, Coca-Cola commercial, here was my first AD and here was my second AD, all in one line rather than
cool
laid out like this.
Yeah, and actually speaking of commercials, Allison, have you PA'd on any commercials?
I actually have not. I've really just been working on the shows, the big three.
The big three, the classic big three. Also, I'm so sorry, Allison. I just saw your what you sent in the chat. Thank you so much for sending that. I'm so sorry I skipped over asking you.
I just wanted to put it out there because I knew we moved past that, but I also was like, I really want people to know this.
Good. Okay. Allison put some very helpful information about what to wear into the chat as well. So thank you very much for that. I know that commercial work is PA work can be slightly different than like TV show or movie work. Noah, have you done commercials?
Yeah, not too many, but from my experience, there's a big difference between like say like a union commercial versus like a non-union commercial. Like I guess for example, I worked on like one of the commercials for Justified that they shot in Chicago a couple years ago. And that one was on a weekend that it pretty much operated like a TV show. I was just in the locations department, and then every department was only doing one thing, versus if you're on a non-union commercial, say like I did one, it was a Chicago-based company, but it was for a hospital in Champaign. That one, everyone was kind of doing multiple roles. So I was the van PA, so I was driving the director and the actors every morning. But I was also like helping set up the crafty table, and then another PA he was an on-set PA, but he was also like driving the grip gear, which was like insane to me. So it definitely depends on if it's like a non-union show versus a union show. But non-U, it's PAs probably do more stuff out of the production department than they would have to on a union show, for sure.
And I think it's important to mention that as well. And we won't get into all the specifics of, kind of how the unions operate and everything. However, for a lot of the shows that we've been talking about, these are union shows. So as, thrilling or not thrilling as it can be to be a PA, you will never, ever, ever have to move a different department's equipment. In fact, you are obligated to not do that, and you are not allowed to touch other departments' equipment. So like Noah saying there that he was driving people around, like that would never happen on the union show. There's a totally different team of the Teamsters that would take care of that. So PAs themselves are non-union, unfortunately. So, fingers crossed that changes at some point. However, there are a few other unions controlling a lot of what's going on set. So you never, if you're like, oh, I'm not that strong, I don't know how much equipment I can carry, you're not going to be carrying other people's equipment. Trust me. One of the first times that I was PAing, there was one of the camera people was pushing a camera cart, and it was sort of on an uneven road, and it started to tip a little bit, and something started to fall off of it. And I instinctually went to grab the thing that was going to fall off, and somebody was like, no, you do not, like, I know that it was falling, but that's not your equipment. That's not your job. You cannot, do not touch that. Which, well, I was like, what do you mean? I'm trying to help, but that is kind of how it is. So that's another important thing to note about being a PA, is that you'll never have to do any of that. In fact, you are strongly encouraged to not do that.
I will throw in one anecdote. I won't use any names. He was a good guy, but one of the ADs. I'm complimenting Sandwich. He's a good guy. This is just one silly thing he did. I was working on a show, and they wanted to get a master shot of this room with a bunch of tables in it, and they didn't know they wanted to get that shot. So all the tables are still there, and they need to get the tables out. So the AD says, like, all available hands, pick up a table and move it. And I saw a grip pick up a PA and pull them away from the table and said, he shouldn't have said that. No one should have their hands on a table right now. So they asked all of the PAs to stand on the sidewalk outside as they explained to this AD that he worked in the commercial world originally, where that's okay. But in the union world, that is not the PA's job to be moving all of the set dressing.
Oh, wow.
Well, and that being said, too, there are times, and this is totally dependent on the person. There are times where it's like, because your on-set dresser, they're in charge of, like you said, moving anything that's in the way of a shot. Like sometimes it's like, we have to move this large coffee table, or we have to move this dresser because the camera needs to go here. And there are times where it'll be like, hey, can I get someone to, like, the on-set dresser will ask himself, because he can't do it physically, or they can't do it physically by themselves. Hey, can I get someone to help me? Oftentimes they'll pick someone that's in their union, like whoever is available, and they'll take a grip or whatever. But sometimes I've seen it happen before where it's like, hey, you as a PA, can you help me move this real quick? So if they're giving you permission, then that's fine. Like in that situation with the thing coming off a camera cart, you can say, like, do you want help? And then they might be like, yeah, then you can touch their cart or whatever, but definitely don't touch it without asking. The only department that is pretty much always okay with moving their stuff without asking, but I always check anyway, is crafty, just because it's things like moving garbage cans, moving, the water cooler, and they're usually totally, if they're there and available, ask them, but oftentimes they're running around, they're setting up the next snack, or they're on a run to go get more snacks or whatever, or they're at their setup, their main setup. So there are oftentimes, and I'll just like ask at the beginning of the show, like, hey, are you guys cool with the PAs moving the trash cans and the water coolers if you're not around? And sometimes they'll say, no, just call us in, we'll get there. And sometimes they're like, yeah, if we're not there, take care of it. But yeah, there are times where there's like explicit permission given, like, hey, I don't know, like if you're like in a classroom, I have 50 tables to move, I can't move it that quickly. Yeah, give me a couple PAs to help. But do wait for that explicit permission from said department before you just start touching their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And these are, what we're talking about here is in reference to, union shows, like Allie and I worked on a show that was a Disney show, that was a big enough show where it had those distinctions. Commercials are a little bit different. Indie stuff is a little bit different. Obviously if you're on like a really, really small non-union crew, then you're probably going to be in there doing a lot more. But it is important just to note that stuff. If you are going to start on a big show. I see another question here. And I just want to circle back because we were just talking about resumes a second ago. If I only have a handful of PA credits, like 3, what should the focus be of my resume? Should I put student work on there, or should I put my unrelated jobs on there? That's a really great question. I'm going to pass this one off because I recently submitted a resume, and I hadn't really like done anything since the strikes other than like work as a barista. So I put my barista work on there as well, so that to show that I have been doing something. Like I haven't just been sitting at home since the last show I worked on. But yeah, if somebody wants to chime in, I don't know, Allison or Noah, if you guys put that work on there, and Allie, if from a hiring standpoint, if you would like to see people's other work or anything like that, what do you guys think about that? Anybody can chime in. Allison, you look.
Yeah,
Say your piece first, yeah.
When I was at the point of only having one credit because I worked full time on a show, that was like my first thing. So it was literally just one thing I could put. I did have other things on there. So I put student work, and then I put just outside experience. And you can even like, have those distinctions on there, like student work, and then if you have other experience, like you're saying barista or whatever, and like how I was a teacher, I would put other experience, just so, because I don't know if this is like that part of me that's always been ingrained, like you want a full page as a resume, or like almost a full page, but when I look at a resume and if it's like this big, I'm like, ooh, like we should let's get something on there, something to show that this is not the only thing you've ever done in your entire life. You were born and then you started working on this one thing. So yeah, I would definitely say until you've gotten enough things to build up. And that's, and that's the lovely thing, is as you can start being like, oh, I can cut this out, I can cut this out. That's a good thing for yourself. But yeah, definitely have other things to show that you have a realm of experience. And sometimes it's things that are unrelated, like if you are a barista, or if you work in the service industry, or if it's something completely left field. You never know what skills are going to apply to your job and help you have, or give you something that helps you in this industry, because it's just such a mosh posh of things. Put it on there, because it at least shows us like you have skills, you know how to work with other people, and you're not an idiot. I don't know like how else to say it, but just something to show like you worked and you have work credit or work ethic, and you're a human being, I guess.
Totally.
No,
Allison, or I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say, to go off of that, like absolutely put like any kind of like special skill you think might be available. Because I know one guy who started off as a PA, set PA, and then went to office PA, and then now he's working as on-set special effects. And that was because he was able to argue that working at his parents' auto body shop like gave him all the necessary engineering skills needed for on-set special effects. And then he said, like, during the strike, I went back to their shop, and now I'm the on-set special effects guy, because I was able to take that like experience outside of the film world and then like put that back into the film world. So I think it definitely helps.
Yeah, and honestly, if you don't have a lot of credits, I think you could benefit from maybe more of a skills-based resume rather than a work experience-based resume. So that's basically where, like you have your education or whatever at the top, and then you list your skills so you can group them under like, I don't know, like just as a random example, like organizational, like administrative skills. And like, let's say you were a barista or something, like you could say like you helped inventory, or, like kept records, you could also put like customer service under there, like, because customer service is so crucial for working as a lockup PA, because people will just come at you hard and fast, so angry for no reason. And you have to be able to de-escalate that without needing like people to come help you. So like, like listing out your skills, and then like, you could talk about what you did at individual jobs underneath like the bigger headers, and then, you list your like 3 work experiences at the bottom. So that way, you're highlighting the things that like the tangible things you do have, these skills that you've built up, but then it's not so much highlighting the fact that, oh, I really only have 3 credits, so that's what I'd recommend.
Totally. And then Allie, I know you mentioned that you had like little business cards that you were giving out too, which I think is great. I never
Yeah.
did that. That's a really great idea. I wish I would have thought of that. But somebody did ask, what did you have on those besides your name and headshot? What else? Was it like your email?
Yeah.
What was on there?
Unfortunately, I got rid of them recently, but otherwise I'd show. But yeah, so I had my email, my phone number, and my Facebook. Just the Facebook, just because I don't know, you never know how someone wants to contact you. And then so just literally my name, and then I put production assistant, And even though I hadn't worked yet as a production assistant, I was like, I am a PA. This is what I want to do. So I'm going to put it out there. And, and it's luckily such an entry level job that it's like, I could never put something like assistant director. Like I wasn't in the union at the time. Or, if you want to put camera operator because you did that when you were in college, I definitely wouldn't put that unless you're in the union for those things. But yeah, I literally just put my name, production assistant, phone number, email, Facebook, and my picture. So plain and simple. And here's my information. Here's how to contact me. Here's what I look like.
Totally. I mean, that's a great way to stand out. I think that once you get your first day and you're working as a production assistant, you want to stand out in to a certain degree. You want people to remember you, and you want to be well liked, and just so that you can continue working and continue doing what you want to do. Obviously, without inhibiting your ability to do the work on the day. But I remember, I think it was one of the first days I worked, and it was with you, Allie, which was so lovely that you're here. Is we had gone back to this stage, so it was a little bit more of a controlled environment. There were less PAs there, like it was a little bit more chill, and so I was like kind of learning how to navigate everything. But I just got water for every single crew member, not just like the directors and the producers or whatever. I was just sort of giving water out to everybody that I could, and just introduce myself, so that I was like, they got to remember me, right? Like I just introduced myself and gave them a bottle of water. Which was great, because then the next day, the next time I came back, I like remembered a lot of the guys. I was like, oh, that's this guy, that's this girl, that like, and right away you just feel so much more comfortable. So, Allie had the great idea of the business cards, which is a little bit more professional than what I, thought was a good idea. But any way that you can kind of just introduce yourself to people, it will just get so much more comfortable than when you have to go ask them a question or go over and figure out what's going on. So
and that being said, that's a really, really good way to meet the crew. My business cards were just for if I was like, hey, I'm looking to PA, and then someone would say, well, give me your contact, and I'd be like, here's a business card. I would not have walked around on set and been like, you're a grip, take my business card. You're in the camera department, take my business card. And that being said, too, I do remember you doing that, Stuart, and that's just like another standout way. Because first of all, it's important to say this was a summer show, so everyone's like sweating and hot, and we'd just been on location. That's one of those initiative things I was talking about, that when I see a PA, I'm like, damn, good job, because that's something that, like, when I've got other things on my mind, I forget to remind PAs, like, hey, let's make sure people are drinking water. And, it's just a thoughtful initiative taking step that you look at that and you're like, all right, this guy's thinking ahead, thinking about what other people need. And that's a good indicator of a strong PA to come.
That's very sweet of you. Thank you very much. I know we're like just past an hour and a half. I know we've been taking our time. I don't know, Noah or Allison, do you guys want to pick maybe like one or two more questions that we can get into before?
Yeah, I see one here from Dan. Would you guys recommend using Staff Me Up to look for entry-level jobs? How about Backstage, LinkedIn? I'd say in my experience, I've never had any luck on Backstage or Staff Me Up. I've used Backstage, worked on a short film once to get actors to work on it. And then Staff Me Up, I'm sure everyone's experiences are different, but I've heard that that's more common with, say, like documentary or reality or shows that are outside of a city coming to a city where they don't know people. So it's possible you could definitely find work in that, but I think that's more within like the documentary realm. So if it works for you, that's awesome. I will say one thing is I got 2 offers through IMDb Pro. I know that's like kind of contentious if that works or not. But one thing was like I paid for the paid IMDb, it'll tell you the second that like someone is attached to a show, and I saw, oh, so and so is attached to a show, and then I immediately emailed that person and I was like, hey, I saw that this show got picked up for production. Do you need crew? And he's like, oh wow, that was fast. And I got an offer through that. And then I was out of work for a while during winter because there's more shows in the summer. And I just started like IMDb proing people and just like reaching out to their emails, just saying, hey, do you have any advice for anyone like looking for work, or do you know anyone? And I got an offer through that too. So it's one of those things where it's definitely I can't say it'll work in every experience, or it might just be like the breadth of emails you send out. Statistically, you should get a positive one. But I'd say in most cases, it's just like hitting up people you know. And if that's not the case, just straight up like cold email people. It's sometimes they won't respond, sometimes they'll just respond with advice, sometimes it's an offer. You never know.
Yeah, and that being said, even as someone who has a career already, I cold emailed the UPM on the show I'm currently working on, and that's how I got hired. So you put yourself out there, cast your net and see what you rake in. I have heard of people getting, I think it's more indie stuff, but indie helps a lot too because there's a good transition from indie over to union, and there's people too who just build their career in the indie world and they work all the time with that. But Staff Me Up, I've heard things of that. I know the Facebook group that you mentioned, Noah, that I've seen people get work from that. So just literally anything and everything. And yes, I do attach my resume in the cold emails. Just give a little blurb in the thing like, I'm a production assistant local in Chicago looking for work. I look forward to getting hired, or look forward to hearing from you. Please see my resume attached, kind of thing. And then just because we're in that same realm, any current PA job opportunities or advice for spring and summer. Currently, I haven't really heard of anything other than the one Chicago shows that are always filming, like Noah said, school time kind of thing. But just keep looking on the Chicago Film Office. They update that when things come in, IMDb. There's also like free newsletters and stuff like that. What's this one that I'm on? Real News, that I'll type it in here so that you guys know what it is, but you can basically sign up and get emails from them. Not Q&A. So Real News Chicago, they have like, they'll send out things, and sometimes it's a little bit delayed information, but some of it's really far in advance information, and they'll tell you what's going on and what's filming. So yeah, just keeping your nose to the ground and putting your info out there for anyone who could possibly help. And then kind of also going into this question of being in college, make friends with the older people in your college, because a lot of times they'll graduate before you do, and then they'll be in the industry. And then like, this is how I got Stuart's information was, right? Because you went to school with Ocker.
Oh, with Jacob. I knew him when I was in school. We did not go to school together, but I met him while we were both still in college. And he graduated the year before me. Yeah.
Right. So then Jacob Ocker was working it started as a PA. That's how I met him. And then he started working in 600 Union, a camera. And then he just came up to me on the show I was working on. I was like, hey, my friend is just moving into town. Like, do you think you can maybe give him a chance and hire him as a PA? And I was like, yeah. And I did. And then we ended up bringing Stuart on as full time. So just reaching out to anyone who's got any possible connections. It doesn't hurt. And like Noah said, it's a numbers game. You shoot out 100 emails, maybe you'll get 2 back, but maybe those 2 will be the thing that gets you hired.
Totally. And Allison, I want to pass it to you too to see what you think, but I did just want to say too, there was also a lot of, we kind of touched on this, but there's a lot of strength in like doing really tiny indie stuff with your friends too. I mean, it might, usually it's very fun, but don't just shoot for the big shows or the big movies, or like David Fincher's got a new movie, come on, I'm gonna just send a million emails to try to get on that. It's also very valuable to work on really small stuff, and even if it's you might not, it might just be a day or 2 or whatever, a lot of those people then go work on other stuff, and then it can bring you on. So just sort of any way that you can get your toes wet, even if it's really indie stuff, even if it's like we mentioned, going to a festival, like Allison works at SIF, like going to a festival, dipping your toes in, meeting a couple people, hey, I want to do this, giving your information out and everything. It's just this never ending sort of changing machine of what people are working on. But anyway, Allison, do you have anything to add to kind of that whole vibe?
I mean, a lot of great things from everybody. But I guess, I don't know, to answer the question about like stuff you can do in school to get involved. Make connections with your peers, because you never know who you're going to be working with. But I also think like, start your own student sets. Like if nobody's filming anything, like get organized, get together, like make something happen so you guys can start practicing these skills. And you'll kind of have an idea of like, you know, you'll make those mistakes on a smaller scale than like going into your first set and you're like completely something up, and then like, you know, you have the room to fail in like the student set world. And like, yeah, just building up those skills. There's a lot of great resources online, not only for learning on set skills, but like, you know, if you're interested in lighting, camera, like, you know, there's a million things. Like I love Rocket Jump Film School on YouTube. I learned so much stuff from those guys. But yeah, like just I feel like practice, make things happen so you can practice. Like that's my best advice.
Totally. I could not agree more. I think that's sort of a beautiful note to end it on. And we've also taken an hour and 45 minutes now. So I know people have lives and need to get back to their things. So thank you, everybody. Rebecca, is there anything that you would like to add before we kind of...
No, this has just been really informative, especially for me too. I know I started out when I was in college. I worked as a PA on a set, but it was extremely low budget. It was probably before all these, like, before the Me Too movement, before all this sort of stuff, when, you know, you could get, I just want to ask, like, if you get on a set that's just not healthy, is there a way to like talk to someone about it or something like that? I just know, like, I get a lot of calls from like wannabes. I hate to call them that, but, you know, just people who may not know what they're doing, but, you know, want to hire people. And maybe you get on set and it's just not cool. Do you know what I'm saying?
Just
should you just take everything and anything? Like if you see something?
I mean, you know, it's I'll pass this off. I know that it's difficult because PAs are in a really sort of unfortunate crossroads because you're non-union and you're also sort of, you know, like the lowest tier of crew member, and there are a lot of people that want to do it. However, if it's not a good set environment, that's never worth putting yourself through in the hopes that it's going to lead to another job. There will always be opportunities to PA. That it's a lot of hours for not a lot of money compared to how much other crew members are making and people in unions are making. If it is never worth it to put yourself through any sort of, you know, either dangerous or just unhealthy or just not, you know, conducive to a healthy work environment, it's not worth it because you really want to PA. Other PA opportunities will come with more decent people. I am so fortunate to have only worked on shows where I was like totally like loved all of the fellow PAs and had a really great bond with everybody. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on it. There will always be more work. You don't need to put yourself through that.
So should you work for free? I guess people are asking, like, you know, should you?
I mean, again, should you is it's difficult. If you have another job and you have the opportunity and you can afford to go work for a day or two without getting paid, you know, people are going to be very happy about that and will probably ask you to come back, and it probably will lead to you getting more paid gigs. I mean, in the same way as like I went to school, you know, I went to film school with friends who do music videos, and they started doing music videos for free because they needed something to show people so that they could charge people. And then slowly but surely, you know, they were able to like get paid more and more and more and more based on their work experience. But I mean, I was never really PAing for free, you know, other than working on student sets. So if you are stable enough in your income to be able to like hop on indie stuff for very little money, it's probably, you know, if you can and you're interested, you should. However, I don't think that people need to work for free to be able to continue working. I don't know, maybe Allie and Noah can speak on that too, but that's kind of where I stand on it.
I kind of agree. I think it's a personal choice. There's opportunities to work for pay, and there's opportunities to work for not great pay, and there's opportunities to work for free. What I will say, and Stuart, you kind of touched on this. I mean, I personally know a lot of people who are full-fledged members in a union, have very healthy careers, and they choose to go and do indies, and they choose to go and do these low budget things. Part of it just because they want to, or they're interested, or they're helping a friend, or because it's what's coming to them at the moment. So sometimes you might be on this thing that's paying you $100 a day for long hours, which isn't much, but you might meet people who can get you on the bigger things or whatever. And that being said too, like I know when there's a lot of people too in the industry, because we're not all doing the jobs we want to end up in. So we'll take opportunities ourselves and make things just like as if we're students, we'll write, someone will write something and be like, let's make this when we're on a break. And a lot of times with that, we'll get friends that we know within our, community, and we'll take people who maybe we'll take a PA and they get to first AD, or someone who's a B camera assistant and they get to camera operate or something like that. So if you ever find out opportunities like that too, like it just gives you more info and gives you more experience. But that being said, it's a personal choice ultimately. If you can and are willing to work for free, your own limits hopefully, and do what you're capable of financially and emotionally and physically. And that being said too, in regards to the working in poor environments, what I try to do and what I try to come into the mentality of it is at the end of the day, you're working 14 hours a day, usually 12 to 14 hours. And nobody wants to be around someone who is hard to work with for 14 hours. That's a long time to be around people. You will see these people more than you see your own family, your own friends. So I think I like to kind of be the change I want to see in the world in this situation. Is I want to be the person who comes to set, and I'm very, very, very rarely in a bad mood. I am always, happy to help and happy to be there and do what I can to create that positive environment. But that being said, you're always it's a personality thing at the end of the day. There's a lot of personalities. We're not the only industry who deals with this. And I think that's also a thing of knowing your personal limits. What are you willing to accept? On something that I worked on a lot, I had someone who I was directly under who could be mean at times, and it was sometimes hard to work with her. At the end of the day, I stuck it out because I personally knew that I could. And it made me a better PA at the end of the day, and I was able to grow and learn under her. But that doesn't mean that you have to stick it out or that you should feel forced to, especially if someone's being aggressive, bullying, or making you uncomfortable and not wanting to go to work. Then yeah, you should definitely either speak to your higher ups. If this is someone who is a higher up, go to the person above them. If you need to reach out to HR, because every single show, like big wise anyway, or union, has an HR company and a team. And I know that's kind of like the scary thing, like, oh, I'm going to HR, but they're there at the end of the day to help you and to help resolve a situation. So I think similar answer is know your own personal limits and know what you are willing to take and not take. And if there are people in my mind that I will never choose to work with again. But I'm at the point where I know my limits and I know what I can and can't afford. So just know yourself, but you definitely should not feel forced to work in shitty environments just because you feel like you need the work. Right. Do what you're capable of and do what you can personally withstand. And, like Stuart said, there's other opportunities. There's always something coming up.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you everyone for doing this. I'm sorry to end it.
Oh, that's okay.
No, this was fun.
No, I mean, it sounds like to me, like being an outsider from film sets and such, that the most important thing is you get hired, right, for one job, and the important thing is getting rehired. Like, so what you need to show up. I just can't tell you how many times I've met people who just don't show up. And I don't know, it's that kind of basic, kind of like what you said in terms of just being a kind person, someone who's grateful to be there, someone who's willing to hop to it and do what needs to be done. And it's like getting rehired. Once you're on that list, like on Allie's list of like a PA that does a great job, she's going to call you again and again and again. So it's really about what you do on set, right?
Totally. I just want to say as one quick parting word, the best advice, genuinely, probably the best advice I ever got for being a PA was a friend of mine saying, all you have to do is show up and be chill. Just show up, be a chiller, listen to what people tell you. You know, as long as you're just there to learn, there to have a good attitude, it's gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. It's quite simple. So that was always good advice for me. If I was ever getting too stressed out, I'd be like, oh yeah, just be chill. It's gonna be okay. I got it. You know, that's kind of the best advice that I can give.
Okay. Sorry, my 16-year-old is yelling at me and behind. But I just want to say, like, thank you everyone for joining us. We do have workshops happening throughout the year. We do these virtual webinars, which are awesome. So just go to our website often at chicagoemmyonline.org to see what's going on. We do look for volunteers when we do our Emmy Awards in November. That's also a great way to meet people. You know, just events that go on in the city, that kind of thing. And in addition, we have scholarships. We have a $6,000 scholarship for juniors heading into senior year that a lot of people don't know about. So look on our website under students and our scholarship program. And we also have a college student awards that we do in June, where you can enter your work and be awarded by the Television Academy in terms of a Crystal Pillar. So anyway, thank you again, everyone. And thank you, Stuart and Noah, for doing an awesome job, and Allie for being such a wonderful guest, and Allison, who's not here right now. I think she had to hop off. But thank you again, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for taking the time.
And I'm going to put my email here in case anyone has any questions that they want to ask after this is over.
Great. And
real quick, because I think this is a good question. There's a question
Mhm.
of, will the recording of this be available to view after it ends?
Yes. So we will get it on our website probably by tomorrow, or hopefully maybe by this afternoon. So
awesome.
Sweet.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.